Let's get to the news. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the news. So first up, we have Liz Cheney, who was defeated in her Republican primary race this past week. So I guess you can say sort of achievement unlocked in the culture war as the Cheney dynasty comes to an end, at least for now. So feel free to buy your weapons and armor and in-game skins or whatever other stuff you want to buy. Just kidding. But almost a 40-point blowout to her Trump-backed challenger, Harriet Hageman. And it's a little bit surprising because, of all people, her father, Dick Cheney, came out and basically said, look, in her endorsement kind of her reelection campaign, in our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. So let that sink in. I just couldn't imagine why nobody voted for Liz Cheney with that wonderful, resounding endorsement of his daughter. But that is how the cookie crumbled, and she did get absolutely wrecked. Both she and her father, you could say, in this past race for her congressional seat. And this just goes to show that Trumpism is alive and well. Donald Trump may be out of the White House, sure, but his movement and his impact is bigger than ever. And, you know, it's kind of shocking to me because she basically came out and said after her loss that she wants to run for president. She had a victory speech lined up. Her organization is all slated to go, and she basically compared herself to Abraham Lincoln. And like, unless you know something that we don't, like, this is just pure lunacy and like delusionalism. You know, Ben Shapiro says facts don't care about your feelings, and in this case, you know, feelings don't care about your facts. You know, like she's like, oh, I got completely demolished in my, you know, kind of home district, kind of my hometown. That's great. Let's run for president after a 40-point blowout in her own place. So I think that there's probably like two general potential strategies here. One, she just wants to be a thorn on sort of the Trump/MAGA movement side and just have a bigger platform to speak on so that she can really kind of make her statements over the years to come if she does actually formally announce and not just hint at it. And then two is maybe she sees something that we don't, right? Like she has this political like heat seeker missile, and she just wants to like aim it right at the, you know, the office and somehow miraculously fall into the White House. We'll see if that happens. Either way, you know, I think she'll probably continue to join forces with like the Lincoln Project. I guess it makes sense. Abraham Lincoln is who she's comparing herself to. Slash kind of the Never Trumper movement, and then partner with the left-wing establishment to really pursue, you know, one of those two kind of general strategies. But ultimately, I don't think she'll have enough support from either of them to really make a difference, because nobody even likes her to like give her that kind of level of support. And like it just goes to show, like, I really do think that like one of the biggest signs of like loserism and like spiritual enemy forces nowadays are just people who can tear down, but they cannot create. You know, it's easy for people like Liz and Dick Cheney to basically come out and just be hate mongers and talk about how bad everybody is that disagrees with them, up to and including Donald Trump, perhaps most of all. But it's very, very difficult to create something of value that actually lasts, right? I'm sure Cheney would have loved, right, for Cheneyism to be a thing and for that to have, you know, lasted in a good and meaningful, impactful way. And maybe it has through the neocons or the state apparatus, who knows? But it's very hard to create something, you know. And, you know, on any given day, I would take one person who can create value in society than someone who can destroy, right? I would take one creator over 100 destroyers on any given day, just given the challenge involved. Ultimately, I think this story falls in the B tier in terms of significance to the culture. I think we expected it. We didn't know it was going to be a blowout. And we didn't know that she was going to announce kind of more or less informally here, kind of a run for the presidency. But ultimately, I think she's a loser, will continue to be a loser. And that's just the fate that she's chosen for herself. But culturally, I don't think it goes too much beyond her little bubble. All right, moving on. So we have a bigger story today going on with Mr. Brian Stelter. So Brian Stelter was just cut from CNN this past week, and CNN has been really cleaning house. They also let go of Jeffrey Tubin, who was kind of pleasuring himself and got caught on camera, on air, while working with coworkers. And it took about a year, I guess, for that to kind of transpire into an actual termination, I suppose. And there's rumors that, Brian Stelter will not be the only one to go. He and his show Reliable Sources. But there's a few more kind of names that have been kind of rumored to be coming up pretty soon as well. So we'll kind of see how that slates out. He gave a really, what I would call, tasteful and kind of artful message here on his way out. 4-minute clip here. Very gracious exit, to be honest with you. It wasn't, super mired in controversy, like, for example, the Cuomo exit. It was a very grateful, pleasant kind of like, well-put exit. The new boss of CNN kind of gave him the opportunity, even after his show was effectively cut and canceled, to really come and give one final word. Brian Stelter claims that no one at CNN management actually reviewed his outgoing message, right? So there's a level of kind of, if you would, grace there to give him some room to give a good, a farewell speech, if you would. But I just want to, even though I think he's basically a media lapdog and kind of establishment lapdog, he said two things that I'll give him credit for. One is he wants all of us to, quote unquote, ensure accountability. And then, two, he's saying we're all members of the media, helping to make it better. So I thought those were really, really interesting takes. Like towards the end of his speech here, he's like, look, everybody has kind of a role in this apparatus we call the media. You as an individual reader, you got to get a hold of your local paper, your local digital outlet, hold CNN accountable itself. His network, or former network, I guess now. It's on all of us, he says. We're all members of the media, all helping to make it better. I thought that was a hell of a statement, honestly, because contrast this sort of like let's say version of populism with let's say this Mika Brzezinski story from back in 2017. So she's with MSNBC, and she had a really fascinating quote. I guess almost like 5+ years ago or whatever. Now she's like, well, I think the dangerous edges here that he, referring to Trump, is trying to undermine the media. He's trying to make up his own facts. And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control what people think. And that is our job. So the kicker was that last statement, controlling what people think, that's our job. So that got criticism from conservative media at the time, and she literally comes out the same day and is like, actually, I didn't say that it's our job to control what people think, but we have her on video, and she's literally saying that that's our job. So it's just like double speak here going on. But it's very refreshing to kind of see where we've come. And frankly, I was hoping that in the quote-unquote post-Trump era, we would get back to sanity. And maybe this is a sign that we're slowly getting back to sanity. I still won't watch CNN for years and years and years to come. It's gonna take a long time before they clean house and really regain my trust. But this was a welcome exit, a welcome kind of sign of growth and maturity by Mr. I guess Potato Head himself here, Brian Stelter. I'm gonna move this into the A camp. I think it's good on him for taking the stance that he did. And I'm sure he has a very graceful exit. Nice paycheck, good opportunities, doing news somewhere else, writing some books, giving some speeches. Maybe he'll go work for the White House. It's all just a big incestuous relationship anyway. So good stuff going on there. A little bit of international news next. So we got to talk about this whole Russia-Ukraine situation. So some crazy stuff happened literally within the past day or so. So there is apparently a let's say a leader, an intellectual in Putin's kind of inner circle. He's called Putin's brain even, and his name is Alexander Dugin. He's considered to be an ultra-nationalist philosopher, and I guess he was really prominent in helping to shape Putin's sort of foreign policy perspective and sort of perspective on Ukraine. So anyway, this individual was very nearly assassinated very recently, and it looks like instead of him getting actually taken out, it was his daughter Daria Dugina, who was the one that got taken out because she actually used his car at kind of the last minute, and the car is what had the bomb underneath it, and that's what took him out. So this was actually surprisingly in Moscow, which is quite the statement, because that implies that Ukraine has powers, right? Kiev, Ukraine, they have powers even in Russia and even in Moscow, right? And even in the inner circle of Putin, which is quite something. So this person, Alexander, he's still alive, but unfortunately lost his daughter in the process. One of the reasons that this is kind of prominent or interesting is because apparently Ukraine's 31-year anniversary, what is it called, Independence Day celebration anniversary is coming up. So it's going to be this Wednesday, the 24th, and so Putin is kind of feared at the moment. The president, Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine, is basically saying it's going to get ugly this week. So what I anticipate in this case is, possibly one of two outcomes. One is retaliation from Russia, which would be expected, and they may potentially align it with the 24th as kind of a symbolic gesture. Or two would be the possibility of Ukraine staging a false flag operation, which they've been known to do throughout this war to get media attention and kind of favor from the Western kind of nexus, if you would. So one of those two things, or maybe both, right, are very possible to happen this week in the Ukraine war. So definitely an escalation here. And Zelensky seems to be anticipating some ugliness. One of the interesting things was that this wasn't really talked about very much in the U.S. media, from what I was gathering, just doing the research from this video, mostly international. And then two is it's also a sign of the war either coming to a close if there's a kind of a decisive thing, or just continuing on forever. Well, we're considering continue to send billions of dollars to Ukraine every single year as if it was a 51st state of the country. I'm going to move this to A tier as well, mainly because this is basically a proxy war, and it's very possible that there was help from Western allies in conducting this war, and therefore would have implications on the U.S. and this whole left versus right, Ukraine flag posting nonsense. So, all right. So now we have kind of the centerpiece of this week's news, which is Sam Harris. So Sam Harris. So I saw this insane video that I knew I was going to have to talk about this week of Sam Harris. And this is what I've been titling this whole segment on. I mean, this dude has long Trump derangement syndrome, or long TDS. So my first reaction when I saw this, I guess 2 minute and change or so clip, was I thought maybe Sam Harris was joking or memeing, because I've always taken him as being fairly reasonable and intelligent, and he comes across that way. But the more I've kind of grown and over the years, I've kind of realized that a lot of people are reasonable and intelligent, but are actually empty vessels inside. So I kind of put people like Vosh, for example, on the left into that category. He uses big words. He's very, kind of witty, somewhat clever, kind of on the beat. But when you really look at the substance of many of his arguments, he's really quite hollow, oftentimes, and just simply talks and sounds articulate and interesting, but he's not saying much in terms of actual meaning and depth. So anyway, I kind of feel like Sam might be gravitating to that camp. So anyway, when I got past the sort of he must be kidding phase, I was like, okay, maybe this is pretty old. This has to be before World War III started, before inflation hit 30 years highs, before violent crime took over the nation, before we gave up Afghanistan to the Taliban. Surely this is dated. It has to be over a year old. No, it wasn't. I was like, what? Who talks like this far into this disastrous Biden presidency? It was just mind numbing. And then I kind of like began to kind of calm down a little bit, and ultimately I think that he is just kind of being a numbskull and kind of a clout chasing kind of shock jock kind of person. Like he almost reminds me of like the intellectual version of Howard Stern. So Howard Stern would just say crazy nonsensical stuff, and if it reads it, if it believes it reads, right? Any good news is good news, right? Like it's one of those things where controversy is clicks and views, right? I think there's an element to that, to Sam Harris's kind of like the method of his madness, if you would. It's to get that shock and that attention, and to really lack substance, so insofar as you can trigger, right, to the degree that you want to trigger. So ultimately, I think he's really a spineless dude for this. So let me just try to backtrack. So Trigonometry podcast, he's basically saying that the suppression of the Hunter Biden story was completely valid because Donald Trump is an existential threat to humanity. So anything and everything that could be done to prevent him from taking the office in 2020 and winning the presidency was valid. That is the core of his argument in like 2 minutes and change. I'm not going to play the clip. Go check out Jack Posobiec or YouTube. You can see the whole shebang and pick your jaw up off the floor. So I really view this was an illuminating video for me, because before, like, I had at least a moderate level of respect for him because he used to debate Jordan Peterson. So I think they had a famous debate either in 2018 or 2020. I can't remember now. I think it was 2018, and it was pretty famous, like 8 hours long, very, very deep, very, very intellectual. Jordan was like, I'm exhausted at the end of it. He was really tired, and visibly so. And I had some modicum of respect because Jordan Peterson, who I also respect, respected him enough to give him the opportunity to debate on religion and philosophy and all the associated ethics, morals, etc. And all that respect just went out the window with this one, man. He seems like a person who perhaps he's gotten stupider as he has gotten older. But anyway, I just view him as a spineless snake, lacking in principles, lacking in facts, lacking in logic. He's like an empty well who doesn't even know that he's empty. He even lacks the self-awareness to know that he needs to get filled up. Is kind of my take on this. And so a couple of highlights from the video. He basically compares Trump's management to Trump University to being worse than anything that Hunter or Joe Biden could ever do. And he specifically says that, as it says here from Jack Posobiec, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared. And he goes on to say, it's worse than anything that even Joe Biden or Hunter could do. Anything about selling out, the country's assets or secrets or connections to foreign powers, any of that, none of that, all that pales in comparison to Trump University. He literally says that, which is insanity. He even says in comparison to this, this comparison is really Trump is like the sun, and this Hunter Biden situation and Joe Biden situation is like a firefly in terms of destructive evil. So he makes that comparison. And then he even goes further than that and says he literally compares Trump to an asteroid, no joke, an asteroid hitting the earth, and says that anything that done to stop him is fair and justified. He goes that far. So just complete and utter lunacy. I mean, it's like a middle school child's argument. Very, very depressing and sad to see from such a once bright fellow. And he goes on, I guess, shortly thereafter onto Twitter, and he says, hey, I just want to clarify my remarks here. And again, he's basically just contortioning himself into a very nice sized pretzel here, right? He's like, look, guys, Trump is a very dangerous person, but at the same time, he's not Orange Hitler. Okay. Hey, guys, it was right to conspire against him. I really think it was the right call. Okay. But at the same time, any conspiring that would have been like to commit election fraud or to take any illegal measures, that would have been unthinkable and unreasonable. That would have not been right. but just general conspiring is okay. So he's just kind of a man of contradictions, right? And it's interesting because if you harken back to some of the stories from that time, right? It wasn't just the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. There was a bunch of stuff that was happening in 2020. There was Tara Reid, the former Biden staffer in the 90s, who had her kind of assault allegations against Biden. There was Kamala Harris with her liberal voting record. She was the most left-wing voting record in the Senate. There's the economic progress that was happening, the jobs being added, energy independence, warp speed in terms of the vaccines getting rolled out. And then there was all the stuff around Trump's peace deals. And there was literally a kind of a poll that said 1 in 6 Biden voters would have changed their vote if they knew about these scandals. So it's not just limited to the Biden or the Hunter Biden scandal. It's everything combined. The media was working effectively as an extension of the government to really suppress its political opponents, it would seem, right? And the reason this is valid, and there's at least, let's say, a kind of a pretext or kind of some grounds for it, is Alex Barrison, this former New York Times reporter. He got kicked off of Twitter last year, and this was particularly due to the White House's request, which is literally a violation of the First Amendment. And so I asked, if the bound is legal, what happens when you suppress individuals, which is a violation of the First Amendment? What happens when you suppress organizations that are exercising their right to freedom of the press in this country, which I think is a law. I hope is a law. Last I recall, it was a law. There's definitely grounds for saying that at least some of what they were doing in terms of censorship during the 2020 election was actually illegal, even if there's no, formal charges and trials and convictions and all the rest and sentencing to actually go with it. I think there's fair legal minds out there who would conclude that at least some of that stuff was definitely illegal. Certainly the various videos that came out in 2020 showing all of the, malfeasance, as it were, at these stations and various unusual activities going on. So if the government is known and on record, the White House in particular, for reaching out and asking Twitter to ban individual users who talked about, the COOF, apparently misinformation, this label that they throw around all the time. It's not completely unreasonable to think that they would have done the same thing for news stories that would have hurt Biden and helped Trump. So ultimately, I'm gonna have to give this one an S tier. This is massive to me, and I have to make a quick little statement here. I had respect, as I mentioned, for Sam back when he was debating Jordan. I was like, okay, interesting, diversity of ideas, atheism versus non-atheism. Let's see what that's all about. But I must say, forget about what's true and what's not true for a moment in terms of facts and falsehood. Let's just look at impact of these two men. I mean, it's interesting seeing now 4 years since that happened. I've seen literally thousands upon thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dudes come and show love and appreciation for Jordan Peterson for changing their life by telling them to, make your bed, walk with your back, and shoulders straight, accept personal responsibility, all these things, these very simple, basic fact truths. I've seen so many lives get turned around. People who were on the verge of, suicide and, infidelity and leaving their, their spouse and leaving their children, substance abuse, people just getting their lives turned around left, right, and center, right? People having hope in the morning, to kind of start their day and have something meaningful to do. I've seen this so many times, people breaking down in tears, and Jordan himself breaking down in tears, right? Recalling and kind of recollecting these stories. I've never heard of any such thing with Sam Harris, not even once. No one that I've ever seen. I'm a young male. I know at least some young men. I've seen young men. No one who I ever have seen, no one in public life that I'm aware of has ever been benefited by Sam Harris. No one's like, that atheism, so useful. It's really opened my eyes. I was gonna stone somebody, but I decided against it because I listened to Sam Harris. No one listens to Sam Harris and is like, you know what? I think I want to love my wife and like pray for her. Like no one does that. No one does that, right? He has no value system to impart upon people. He is literally an empty well. Okay, moving on. So we got to talk about Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate. I'm just gonna like kind of gloss over this one. He is a former, I guess, UFC fighter, kickboxer who's turned into a social media personality. He tells people about manhood. He's part of the manosphere. He's a hyper male, an alpha male. It's a very, very macho guy. Very aggressive individual verbally, right? And even intellectually. Demands and commands respect. And he's just very, very alpha, right? He's kind of almost a meme unto himself. But anyway, the story here is that he got kicked off of Meta or Facebook, as well as TikTok, and then closed his Hustlers University. So I guess it was like kind of a get rich quick marketing program, teaching people how to make money. But he closed it because people have been saying it's a scam. So how's that for a sidebar, by the way? So Trump University is literally worse than a meteor heading towards Earth or whatever Sam Harris compared it to. And Hustlers University by Andrew Tate, that's fine. I'm sure Sam Harris doesn't even know that this exists. That the whole Trump University thing was just absolute BS. I mean, there are so many universities themselves. Some might argue are scams. If that's true for Donald Trump, that's true of every single dean at every single institution across the country that has been gouging these kids for gender studies degrees that offer them no value and no marketability. And every single personality, it's not unusual, I should say, not every single one, but a lot of them, they'll get this influence and then they'll charge, hey, here's a master class for $1,000. Here's a university, some online course for thousands and thousands and thousands of bucks, and this is a hustle for them to make money off of you. This is completely normal and common. So, because Trump did it, now it's a threat to democracy. Now he's, worse than Hitler. Come on. Just the amount of intellectual, backflips and circus jumps and bending over backwards you have to do to make sense of these people like Sam is just really sad. But at any rate, I'm going to give this guy an A on the meaning sphere, mainly because even though I'm not a big Andrew Tate individual, a lot of people follow this guy. Like I have younger, family members, male family members who talk about this guy as if he was like kind of a god, which is kind of scary. So when you see him kind of going in this direction here, it's very interesting to kind of see the impact. Maybe he'll be, kind of like, let's say an alt Alex Jones in the future, right? He gets deplatformed, sets up his own platforms and come back kind of stronger than ever, and then goes down in a lawsuit. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. But I don't like him. He definitely does indeed come off as a misogynist, and that was the grounds for his removal, by the way. It was misogyny, apparently. And even though he said some other controversial things around, the Koof narrative, and some people are speculating that was the reason why. But any rate, A class. We'll see kind of what becomes of the guy. I'm sure he's not going anywhere as long as he has a presence on YouTube. Frankly, I think he'll be fine. A lot of people are watching those YouTube videos. All right. And then to kind of mix up the pace a little bit, I have to at least make mention of Rumble real quick. This is kind of interesting. So, Rumble is the biggest alternative right now to YouTube, at least in the kind of political news, cultural sphere, and debate and war. And there's some interesting stuff going on that I just wanted to highlight. So Rumble is apparently merging with a kind of a SPAC vehicle to go public. And this past week, their S4, which I guess they need to go public, it was basically approved. So the merger between Rumble and this special vehicle, CFVI, is going to actually go forward, which is kind of a big deal. And then secondly, that a judge recently dismissed, or let's say rejected, Google's motion to dismiss Rumble's lawsuit against Google. So Rumble had sued Google, I guess, for, anti-competitive reasons and probably some stuff around algorithms. But basically, like, Google was trying to get this pushed away, but Rumble continues to move forward. It would be a nice win for them to get an extra $2 billion in capital plus a legal victory over Google. Like, that would be a game changer if Google had to like change its platforms to allow Rumble to be more visible. So, for example, when you search for like a YouTube or like a video on the Google platform, you can actually see Rumble and YouTube's videos in equal measure. That would be huge for Rumble's future success, right? So, we'll kind of stay tuned on this one. It's going to take place, I guess, after September 15th is their next kind of meeting here. But we'll definitely see how things develop. To add to that, Rumble is given some new kind of like functionality for live streaming for bigger creators. So I guess if you have over 100 subscribers, you can do some free live streaming. Give me over 100 subscribers and we'll see what happens with that. And so that's kind of a new thing that helps them to kind of compete against the YouTubes of the world. And not just that, but they actually hit a monthly active user record. So, I mean, think about this. 44 million average MAU, representing a 76% increase compared to the prior year. That is insane. I mean, that is insane, right? If I was an investor, I would be salivating at that. I mean, that's really, really explosive growth. They've been having a great year, especially in this age of censorship. They're adding a bunch of new features and integrations and all these different things that are going on. And they haven't been sniped like that one platform. What was it? It was the one that Candace Owens' husband, I think, runs. But anyway, their infrastructure doesn't seem to be challenged, which is a good thing. So I'm going to move this to A tier as well. A little under the radar, but meaningful headway here. Them going public is kind of a big deal. If there's ever going to be any alternative to YouTube, Rumble was probably where it's going to be, honestly. Last story for today. So we got to talk about Minneapolis. So Minneapolis is up to no good right now. So I'm actually reading this from a left-wing source for a little bit of a change. Usually my content sources are either neutral or left or right-wing, I should say. But this one is left-wing. So from the Griot, white lash behind Minneapolis plan to fire white teachers explained. And so you have a social justice warrior, Michael Harriet, who just wrote this article, giving sort of an opinion piece on the whole situation. So the basic story is this, okay? So Minneapolis has destroyed its classroom enrollment due to a poor reaction to the COVID pandemic. Poor reaction meaning shutting down schools, harsh policies for returning to the classroom, and teachers not getting their asses back to the classroom to actually teach these students, which leaves the students even further behind than where they should be. So if all of this leads to classroom enrollment going down because the kids are not coming to school, and that also hurts the school's bottom line because they get paid based on head count. So attendance is like their main driver for having money. So when the head count is going down, they're losing money in terms of their budget. They had to start slashing the pay of teachers. So now these idiot teachers who probably didn't want to show up to work anyway, they're now complaining about not getting a living wage. So then they get a bunch of COVID money. So let's see here. They got over $100 million, and I promise I can find it. They got over $100 million. Yeah, here it is. So when Minneapolis Public Schools received $175 million in federal COVID relief funds, the teachers union assumed the budget problem was fixed, but the district used most of the funds to defray costs incurred by the strike. So they want you to believe that a 3-week strike, okay, in March 2022, a 3-week teachers union strike, they want you to believe that cost $175 million. Okay. Let that sink in. So they burnt that money. God knows where it actually went. And they eventually said, okay, since we burned that money that we were supposed to use to pay the teachers and to keep their salary at normal levels instead of like shrinking their salaries, because we've burned all that money, we're going to have to start firing teachers. So on March 25th, the two sides, like the teachers union and what have you, they reached an agreement that said we're going to lay off these excess teachers with certain protections. And at first, they were just going to do it based on seniority. So I think this means then the newest ones get fired, first. I could be wrong. I didn't really see the particulars, but the article seems to imply that newer teachers will get laid off first, not the older ones who've been around for a long time. And but then they kind of pulled a little fast one. They said it's not going to go that way. We're actually going to use like a racial lens on it. So if you're a member of an underrepresented population, then you're basically exempt from this rule. So which means they go from most recently hired to the oldest, but starting with white people. That's basically how they're doing this, which is crazy. And so it's not on merit, so in a sane world you would say I want the best teachers, right? Highest performing, quality teachers. Best record or what have you, performance. And then I want to like compensate them well, right? And make sure that they feel valued and rewarded to have a career here and to be happy in their job. That's what you would do in a sane world, but they're not doing that here. It's based upon race, right? But then it gets even more like maddening here. So here towards the bottom of the article, the left-wing kind of radical opinion writer says, will this make the Minneapolis Public Schools better? He says maybe. So really he's considering that it probably won't. It probably won't. And then he just like basically shits on his own school. What could possibly be worse than the majority of MPS students not being proficient in math and reading? What's financially worse than total insolvency, which they are? What's less equitable than total financial, educational, and inequality? MPS schools are terrible schools. They don't serve the public. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of a way to kind of wrap up the article here. And then he goes even more lunatic. So he says the school district is essentially Donald Trump racist, bloated, and bad at business. Okay, great. Blame it all on Trump. So welcome to 2022's public education system in Democrat-led cities. Absolutely garbage dumpster fire. Like what's the name here? If you're digging a hole and you realize like, oh shoot, I can't get back up. I'm in trouble. What am I gonna do? The worst thing to do is be like, oh, I'm gonna dig the hole even deeper. In theory, you would stop digging a hole, right? Because you're just making your situation worse. And he almost seems to like consent that that's the case, and that he's not really optimistic about about the future of the district. But hell, go out with a bang, why don't you? Scarface style, mutually assured destruction of the city's government run education, and all the kids' education as well. Why not just go out with a bang, right? At least it'll be somewhat more people of color as you burn out. All right, so that is it for today. I'm gonna give this one an A tier, not an S tier, but it is an A tier. Very interesting development, very lunatic inspired development, and we'll see what happens. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to today's rundown. If you liked what you heard, please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.